It was a cold evening, and the streets were quiet, except for the soft sound of footsteps on the wet pavement. The man had finished a long day at work and was walking home, thinking about the tasks he had completed and the ones waiting for him at home. The sky was dark, and clouds had gathered to hide the last light of the day. He pulled his coat tighter around him and hurried a little more, hoping to get home and relax. As he turned a corner near the small park, he noticed a girl sitting on the edge of the sidewalk. She had a thin blanket wrapped around her, and she was shivering slightly. Her clothes looked worn, and her hair was messy. Her face was pale, and there was a look of sadness in her eyes. She was staring down at the ground and did not move as people walked past her. The man slowed down. He usually kept to himself, but something about her made him stop. He felt a tug in his chest that he could not ignore. He approached slowly and spoke in a gentle voice. "Would you like some company?" The girl looked up at him for a moment and quickly looked away. She did not answer at first, but then her eyes met his. He smiled softly and said, "If you want, I can take you somewhere warm." He does not usually do things like this, but he felt that he could not leave her there alone. The girl hesitated for a moment. She seemed nervous, but also curious. After a long pause, she nodded slightly. The man extended his hand in a friendly gesture. She did not take it, but she followed him. As he walked toward his apartment, they did not speak much at first, but the silence did not feel uncomfortable. It was more like a quiet understanding between two people who had not known each other before they passed the familiar streets lined with small shops and cafes closed for the evening. The lights from the windows reflected on the wet pavement and created a soft glow round them. When they reached his apartment, he unlocked the door and held it open for her. She stepped inside cautiously, looking around as if afraid of what she might find. The apartment was modest, with simple furniture and warm lighting. The smell of cooked food lingered from earlier in the day. The man gestured toward the small living room and said, "You can sit here while I get some dinner ready." The girl nodded again and sat on the couch with the blanket still wrapped around her. He went to the kitchen and prepared a simple meal. He cooked pasta with a little sauce and chopped some vegetables to add color and taste. He set the table and brought a glass of water for her. He could hear her moving slightly on the couch and felt a little nervous. He wondered if he had done the right thing bringing her here. She had clearly been through a lot, and he did not want to make her uncomfortable. When he placed the plate in front of her, she looked at it with a small smile. She picked up the fork and took a careful bite. Then she looked at him and said, "Thank you." Her voice was soft, but there was a hint of relief in it. He nodded and said, "You are welcome. It is nice to have someone to share dinner with." She nodded again and continued to eat slowly. They ate. He tried to make small conversation. "How long have you been on the streets?" She did not answer immediately, but after a moment she said, "A few months." She looked down at her plate again, and her hands trembled slightly. He did not press further, but waited patiently. He could see that she was trying to trust him in her own way. He shared a little about himself. Not too much, just enough to make her feel comfortable. "I work nearby, and usually come home late. This is my place." She listened quietly and nodded occasionally. There was a softness in her eyes, as if she had not spoken to anyone kindly in a long time. He could sense the loneliness that had been part of her life, and it made him want to be gently.
Ow.
Dinner was simple, but there was something about the atmosphere that made it feel special. The man and the girl were strangers, but they were sharing a moment that was real and human. There was no judgment, no questions that felt too harsh. Just the quiet presence of someone who cared, and someone who was beginning to feel safe. After the meal, she sat back on the couch and looked at him. She seemed unsure of what to say. He offered her a glass of water, and she took it carefully. She shifted slightly and then said, "I have nowhere to go tonight." He listened closely and nodded slowly. "I can let you stay here for the night," he said softly. "It is not much, but it is warm and safe." The girl hesitated again. She seemed to weigh the offer in her mind. The streets were cold and lonely, and the thought of being inside, where it was warm, made her feel a little hope. She finally nodded and wrapped the blanket around herself a little tighter. He showed her the small spare room that would be hers for the night. She walked slowly and looked around, taking in the simple but clean space. Just she sat on the bed and hugged the blanket around her body. Left her there for a few minutes and returned with a small pillow and an extra blanket. He placed them on the bed and said, "If you need anything, just let me know." She nodded again. Her eyes were tired, but there was a small spark of trust that had begun to grow in them. He felt a sense of relief, knowing that she would not have to spend the night outside alone. They spent the rest of the evening quietly. He read a book while she sat on the bed. Occasionally glancing at him, he could hear her breathing slowly as she began to relax. It was not a lot, but it was a start. The man knew that helping her would be more than just giving her dinner. It would be about listening, understanding, and being patient with her as the night grew darker. He thought about how fragile life could be for some people. The girl had faced so much in such a short time, and yet there was resilience in her. She had survived on the streets and somehow had held on to a piece of herself that had not been broken. Completely, he admired that silently and felt a deep sense of respect for her strength eventually. She lay down on the bed with the blanket wrapped around her. She looked at him and whispered, "Thank you." He nodded and smiled softly. "It is okay, sleep." While she closed her eyes slowly and drifted into a quiet sleep for the first time in many nights, the man sat in the living room thinking about the encounter. He knew that this was just the beginning. He had opened his door and his heart for someone who needed it. He had no idea what the future held, but he felt that helping her in this small way was the right thing to do. He could feel the warmth of human connection. In a world that often seemed cold and indifferent, he realized that sometimes the smallest gestures could have the greatest impact. A simple meal, a kind word, a safe place to sleep could make a difference in a life that felt hopeless. He also knew that trust would take time to build and that he had to be patient and gentle. Night passed quietly. The sounds of the city outside were distant and muffled. Her breathing was even and calm. He felt a sense of fulfillment and purpose. He understood that life could be hard and unfair, but moments like this reminded him that kindness mattered more than anything. As he finally went to his own bed, he felt a mixture of emotions, relief, hope, and a little apprehension. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also new opportunities to help and to connect. He had let a homeless girl in and shared a meal she had let him into in her own way, and that was the start of something meaningful and humanly. Next morning, the man woke up to the soft light coming through the curtains. He got up quietly so as not to disturb the girl who was still asleep on the bed. Her breathing was steady and calm. He looked at her and felt a sense of responsibility and care. He went to the kitchen and started preparing a simple breakfast. He cooked eggs and toasted some bread and poured a glass of juice. He wanted the first meal of the day to feel comforting and safe. When he brought the breakfast to the table, he called softly, "Breakfast is ready." The girl sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes, and looked around. She smiled faintly and nodded. She took the plate and began to eat slowly, savoring each bite. She seemed more relaxed than the night before, and that made him feel a little hope that she might start to trust him more. He sat across from her and tried to make conversation. "How are you feeling?" She looked at him and said, "A little better." She paused and then added, "Thank you for last night." He nodded and said, "It is okay. I am glad you are safe here." He could see a mix of shyness and relief in her expression after breakfast. They cleaned up together. She washed her hands and helped clear the table. The simple routine made the morning feel normal and calm. There was a quiet understanding that they were both learning to be around each other and that it was okay to take small steps toward trust. Once the table was clear, he suggested they take a walk outside. The girl looked hesitant at first, but then nodded. They put on coats and stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The streets were brighter now, and a few people were going about their day. The man walked slowly beside her, letting her set the pace. He wanted her to feel safe and not rushed. As they walked, she began to speak more about herself. She said that she had left home because things had been difficult there. She could not stay. She talked about feeling alone and how hard it was to find a safe place to sleep. She spoke quietly, but her words carried weight and honesty. The man listened without interrupting. He realized that she had carried so much pain on her own, and that she needed someone to just listen without judging. They passed by a small park, and he suggested sitting on a bench. She agreed, and they sat down side by side. The man asked gently, "What do you like to do?" She thought for a moment and said, "I like to draw, but I have not had paper in a long time." He smiled softly and said, "Maybe we can find you some supplies." He saw a small spark of hope in her eyes, and it warmed him. They continued walking and came across a small bookstore. The man suggested looking inside. She hesitated, but then nodded. They walked in, and she carefully looked at the shelves, her eyes lit up at the sight of pencils and notebooks. He let her choose a small notebook and a set of colored pencils. She held them close as if they were precious treasures. The man could see that something as simple as art supplies could bring joy and comfort into her life, and he felt grateful he could offer that. After leaving the store, they walked back toward the apartment. She seemed quieter, but content carrying the small bag of supplies. They talked about simple things along the way: the weather, the colors of the leaves on the trees, and how nice it was to have a place to feel safe. The man could sense her slowly beginning to open up and trust the world. A little more back at the apartment, he suggested she try drawing while he worked on some small chores around the house. She sat at the small table and carefully opened the notebook. She started to sketch shapes and colors. Her hands moved slowly at first, and then more confidently. He watched quietly, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. It was not about the art itself, but about the fact that she was expressing herself and feeling some joy. After so much struggle, they ate lunch together. She made small conversation, and he answered gently. They did not rush or push each other. It was simple and natural, and the comfort of routine began to form a bond between them. After lunch, they cleaned up and then spent the afternoon in quiet companionship. He read a book, while she drew, occasionally glancing at him as if to share the moment. As evening approached, he suggested making dinner together. She agreed, and they prepared a simple meal. She helped chop vegetables and mix ingredients, guided her gently when needed, and encouraged her efforts. She laughed softly when she made small mistakes, and he smiled, letting her know it was okay. They sat down to eat, and the food tasted better than any fancy meal because it was shared in trust and warmth. After dinner, they washed the dishes together and then sat down on the couch. The girl looked tired, but her eyes were bright with a sense of accomplishment from the day. She looked at him and said, "Thank you again for everything." He nodded and said, "You are welcome. I am glad you are here." She smiled faintly and leaned back on the couch. Feeling safe later in the evening, she began to talk about her dreams. She said that she wanted to finish school and maybe become an artist. She spoke with a little excitement in her voice. He listened and encouraged her. He said that it was possible, and that she had talent and determination. He wanted her to believe that her future could be different and brighter than her pastas. The night grew darker. She prepared for bed. He showed her the spare blanket and pillow again, and she settled in comfortably. She looked at him one last time and said, "I feel safe here." He smiled softly and said, "That is good. Sleep well." She closed her eyes and drifted into sleep, once more feeling a little lighter and more hopeful than before. The man sat in the living room reflecting on the day. He realized that helping her was not just about providing food or shelter. It was about listening, offering kindness, and giving her a chance to feel human again. He thought about how fragile life could be and how small acts of compassion could have a big impact. He understood that building trust would take time and patience, but he felt committed to being there for her. He knew that she had the strength to move forward, but that she needed guidance, support, and belief from someone who cared. He felt proud to be that person for her. The night passed quietly and peacefully. The sounds of the city outside were soft and distant. She slept calmly, and he could see that the small steps they had taken together had created a sense of safety and warmth. He felt a mixture of relief, hope, and determination to continue helping her in whatever way he could. Knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, but he also knew that moments like this mattered. He had given her a place to rest, shared meals, and genuine attention, and in return, he received a sense of purpose and connection that was rare and valuable. They were learning from each other, slowly and quietly building trust and understanding in a world that often seemed indifferent and harsh. The next morning, the man woke to the soft light spilling into the apartment. He moved quietly to let the girl continue sleeping. For a few more minutes, he felt a sense of calm looking at her resting peacefully. The night had passed without any trouble, and he felt grateful that she was safe and warm for the first time in a long while. He went to the kitchen and began preparing breakfast, as he had done the day before. The smell of toast and cooking eggs filled the apartment softly. He set a small plate on the table and poured a glass of juice. Waiting for her to wake, she stirred slowly and sat up, rubbing her eyes and stretching slightly. She gave a small nod and a faint smile and began to eat slowly. Savoring each bite, he watched her and felt a mix of relief and curiosity. He wanted to know more about her, but he also understood the importance of letting her speak. When she was ready after a few bites, she spoke softly about how she had ended. Up on the streets, she told him about the arguments at home and how she had nowhere to go. She tried to hold back her tears, but a few slipped down her cheeks. He offered a gentle word and a nod to show that he was listening without judgment. After breakfast, they cleaned up together and sat for a moment in quiet companionship. The man suggested a walk to get some fresh air. She hesitated slightly, but then agreed. They walked slowly down the familiar streets, talking about small things like the weather and the colors of the buildings. She seemed more comfortable and willing to share little details of her life with him. As they passed by a park, he suggested sitting on a bench for a while. She agreed, and they watched the people walking. By some were jogging, some walking dogs, and some were simply enjoying the morning. The girl shared that she liked watching people and imagining their stories. He listened attentively and encouraged her to share more. She began to smile slightly as she spoke about her small dreams and wishes. After the park, they stopped at a small convenience store. He asked if she wanted anything. She thought for a moment and said maybe some snacks for later. She carefully picked a few small items and carried them in a tiny paper bag. He paid quietly and smiled encouragingly. She seemed proud of the small decision and held the bag close as they walked back to the apartment back home. She set down the bag and opened her notebook. She began to draw slowly. At first, and then with more confidence, the man watched quietly and continued with small chores. He could see the concentration on her face and the joy that came from creating something. It was more than just drawing, it was a form of expression. In a way to feel normal again, they shared a simple lunch sitting at the small table. She asked about his work, and he answered gently. He told her about his day without overwhelming her with details. She nodded and occasionally asked questions, showing curiosity and interest in normal things she had missed for so long. The conversation was light but meaningful. After lunch, she asked if they could do something creative together. He suggested they try making a simple craft from items around the apartment. She agreed, and they gathered paper, scissors, and a few markers. They worked quietly side by side, making simple shapes and drawings. She laughed softly when a shape did not come out as planned, and he encouraged her patiently. They shared small smiles, and it felt natural and comfortable. As evening approached, he suggested they cook dinner together. She seemed excited by the idea and helped him chop vegetables and stir ingredients. He guided her gently and praised her efforts. She felt a sense of accomplishment and pride as they worked together. Cooking became a shared activity, and the simple meal felt warmer and more meaningful because it was prepared together. Sat down to eat and talked quietly about their day. She shared a few more thoughts about her dreams and what she hoped for the future. He listened attentively and offered gentle encouragement. He reminded her that small steps mattered and that she had already shown strength and courage just by being here and taking part in the day. After dinner, they washed the dishes together and sat on the couch. She leaned back slightly and looked tired but content. He asked softly if she felt comfortable sleeping for another night. She nodded and gathered the blanket around her. He showed her the pillow and extra blanket again, and she settled in comfortably. She whispered softly that she felt safe here, and he nodded, letting her know that she was welcome. As the night grew darker, he reflected quietly on the day. He realized that helping her was not about grand gestures, but about small, consistent acts of kindness, listening, and being present. He knew that her trust was growing slowly, and that every day would be a step forward in rebuilding some sense of stability and hope. He also thought about the fragility of life and how easily someone could be left alone and vulnerable, yet he felt a sense of purpose, knowing that he could offer safety, warmth, and compassion. The bond between them was subtle but real. Each small interaction built a bridge of trust and understanding that he hoped would carry them forward. He spent some time reading quietly while she slept. The soft sound of her breathing reassured him, and he felt a quiet contentment. The night passed calmly, and he knew that tomorrow would bring new moments to share, new opportunities to listen, and new chances to show that someone cared. He understood that patience would be needed and that the journey was just beginning, but he was ready to be there every step of the way by the time he went to his own bed, he felt a deep sense of connection and responsibility. He knew that life had been harsh for her, but that small acts of warmth, attention, and respect could make a difference. He was determined to continue, helping her rediscover safety, trust, and the small joys that had been missing for so long. The quiet night wrapped around the apartment, and both of them rested, feeling a little more hope and a little more understanding of each other. They were strangers who had met by chance but were slowly becoming companions in a small journey of healing and trust. The man knew that every shared meal, every kind word, and every small gesture of attention mattered, and he felt grateful to be part of her story and to witness the spark of hope returning to her eyes. The morning light came gently through the curtains, and the man woke slowly. He looked over at the girl sleeping peacefully on the bed and felt a quiet sense of contentment. He got up to prepare breakfast again, as he had done the previous days. He wanted to continue giving her the small comforts that made life feel safe and normal. He cooked a simple meal and poured a glass of juice for her. She woke up slowly and stretched. Her eyes met his, and she smiled faintly. She felt more at ease now than when she first arrived. She sat at the table and ate quietly, but with more confidence than before. After breakfast, they cleaned up together. The man suggested a walk outside to enjoy the fresh morning air. She agreed, and they walked slowly down the familiar streets. They spoke about simple things like the weather and the small details of the neighborhood. She seemed more willing to share little pieces of her life. He listened patiently, offering gentle words of encouragement and understanding. They stopped at a small park and sat on a bench watching people pass by. She said she liked seeing people and imagining their stories. The man encouraged her to share more. She spoke about her small dreams and how she wished she could go back to school and have a normal life again. He nodded and told her that she could take steps toward her dreams and that he would support her however he could. As they walked past a small craft store, he suggested they look inside. She hesitated at first, but then agreed. They browsed the shelves slowly. She picked up a small set of colored pencils and a notebook. He paid quietly and smiled at her choice. She held the items carefully as they walked back to the apartment. She seemed proud of the simple treasures and held them close, as if they were very valuable. Back home, she immediately began drawing. She sat at the table, carefully sketching shapes and colors. He worked quietly on small chores around the apartment. He watched her concentration and the quiet joy that creating something gave her. He realized that small things could bring happiness and comfort to a life that had been difficult. They shared a simple lunch. She asked about his work, and he answered gently, without overwhelming her with details. She listened and asked occasional questions, showing interest in normal conversations and experiences that she had missed for so long. In the afternoon, he suggested a small craft project. They gathered paper, scissors, and markers and began to make simple shapes and designs. She laughed softly when things did not come out as planned, and he encouraged her patiently. They shared small smiles and felt the comfort of being in each other's company. The activity was not just about making things, it was about being present and enjoying the small moments together. As evening approached, he suggested they cook dinner together. She seemed excited by the idea and helped him prepare a simple meal. She chopped vegetables and stirred ingredients carefully, guided her gently, and praised her efforts. She felt a sense of pride in helping create something for both of them. They ate dinner together and talked quietly about the day. She shared more thoughts about her future and what she wanted to achieve. He listened attentively and offered gentle encouragement, reminding her that small steps mattered and that she had already shown strength by being here and participating. In the day after dinner, they washed the dishes and sat on the couch. She leaned back, feeling tired but content. He asked if she felt comfortable staying for another night. She nodded and gathered the blanket around her. He gave her the pillow and extra blanket again, and she settled in comfortably. She whispered that she felt safe here, and he nodded, letting her know she was welcomed. Man spent time reflecting on the day. He understood that helping her was not just about providing food or shelter. It was about listening, being present, and offering kindness in a consistent way. He realized that trust would take time, but each small interaction was building a foundation of safety and connection. He thought about the challenges she had faced and how resilient she was. Despite the difficulties she had endured, she still showed the desire to learn to create and to dream. He felt proud to be part of a small step in her journey and to witness the spark of hope returning to her eyes. The quiet night wrapped around the apartment, and both rested, feeling a little more comfort and understanding of each other. The man knew that the journey ahead would have challenges, but also small joys and opportunities to continue building trust. He was committed to being patient and gentle, and to continuing to offer support and kindness. He went to his own bed feeling a mixture of hope and determination. He knew that small acts of warmth and attention could change the course of a life, and he felt grateful to be part of her story, each shared meal, each gentle conversation, and each moment of quiet. The companionship mattered and strengthened the bond they were forming. As they slept, the world outside was quiet and distant. She rested peacefully, knowing she was safe, and he rested with the comfort of knowing he had made a difference. He understood that the journey was ongoing, but that each day brought new chances to connect, to encourage, and to show that someone cared deeply and sincerely. The connection they were building was subtle but strong, and it would carry them forward on the path of trust and hope. Morning arrived softly, and the man woke to the gentle light coming through the curtains. He looked over at the girl sleeping peacefully and felt a quiet happiness, knowing she had another night of safety and warmth. He rose quietly to prepare breakfast, as he had done in the past days. He wanted the day to begin with small comforts and a sense of normalcy. He cooked a simple breakfast and poured a glass of juice for her. She woke slowly and stretched. Her eyes met his, and she gave a small smile. She felt more relaxed now than ever before. She sat at the table and ate with care, savoring each bite. He watched her quietly, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction that he had been able to provide a safe space for her. After breakfast, they cleaned up together. The man suggested taking a walk to enjoy the fresh morning air. She agreed, and they strolled down the familiar streets, talking about small things like the weather and the colors of the buildings. She seemed more willing to share pieces of her life, and he listened, patiently offering gentle encouragement and understanding. They stopped at a small park and sat on a bench watching people pass by. She said she liked imagining stories about the people she saw. The man encouraged her to share more. She spoke about her hopes and dreams for the future, about going back to school and pursuing the things she had always loved. He nodded and assured her that small steps toward her dreams were possible, and that he would support her however he could. After the park, they stopped by a small store. She wanted some small items for herself, and he let her choose. She picked a notebook and some pencils, carefully holding them as if they were treasures. He paid quietly and smiled encouragingly. She seemed proud of the choices and happy to have something to create with. Back at the apartment, she opened her notebook and began to draw. He continued with his small chores, quietly observing the joy that creating something brought to her life. Her focus and concentration were calming and inspiring. It was not just about the drawings, but about the act of expressing herself and feeling human again. They shared a simple lunch. She asked about his work, and he answered gently, giving her a glimpse of normal life. She listened and asked questions, showing interest in ordinary experiences she had missed. The conversation was light but meaningful, building a connection and trust between them. The afternoon, he suggested a small craft activity. They gathered paper, scissors, and markers and began making simple shapes and designs. She laughed softly when things did not turn out perfectly, and he encouraged her patiently. They shared quiet smiles and felt the comfort of being in each other's company. The activity was more than crafting, it was about enjoying the moment together and feeling safe. As evening approached, he suggested preparing dinner together. She agreed, eagerly helping him chop vegetables and stir ingredients. He guided her gently and praised her efforts. She felt a sense of pride and accomplishment in contributing to the meal. Cooking together became a shared experience, and the simple meal felt more meaningful because it was prepared with care and attention. They sat down to eat and spoke quietly about the day. She shared more about her future dreams and hopes. He listened attentively, offering gentle encouragement, reminding her that small steps mattered and that her courage and resilience were already making a difference. In her life after dinner, they washed the dishes together and sat on the couch. She leaned back, feeling tired but content. He asked if she felt ready to stay another night. She nodded and gathered the blanket around her. He placed the pillow and extra blanket for her comfort, and she settled in comfortably. She whispered that she felt safe here, and he nodded, letting her know she was welcome. As the night grew deeper, he reflected quietly on the past days. He realized that helping her was not just about providing food or shelter. It was about listening, showing kindness, and offering consistency. He understood that building trust took time, but every shared meal, every gentle conversation, and every small gesture of attention was forming a foundation of safety and connection. He thought about the challenges she had endured and her strength in facing them. Despite the hardships she had experienced, she still had the desire to create, to dream, and to learn. He felt proud to witness the spark of hope returning to her eyes, and proud to be part of her journey. The quiet apartment held a sense of calm and comfort. They had formed a subtle but strong bond based on trust and mutual respect. He knew that tomorrow would bring new moments to share, new chances to listen and to show compassion. He felt a deep commitment to continue supporting her and helping her rediscover safety and joy in small, everyday things. He spent some time reading quietly while she slept. The soft sound of her breathing reassured him, and he felt contentment and purpose. He understood that the path ahead would have challenges, but moments like these reminded him of the power of small acts of kindness and attention. They were strangers brought together by chance, but slowly becoming companions in a journey of healing, trust, and hope. By the time he went to bed, he felt a mixture of fulfillment and determination. He knew that life could be harsh and unforgiving, but he also knew that simple acts of warmth and care could change a life. He was grateful to be part of hers, and to witness her slowly finding hope and safety again. Each shared meal, each small conversation, and each quiet moment of connection mattered, and would continue to strengthen the bond between them. The night wrapped the apartment in quiet and calm. She rested peacefully, feeling safe, and he rested with the comfort of knowing he had made a difference. The connection they had formed would carry them forward, offering trust, hope, and the reassurance that kindness could be found even in the smallest gestures. Morning arrived quietly, and the man woke feeling a mix of calm and determination. He looked at the girl sleeping peacefully on the bed and felt a strong sense of responsibility. He quietly got up to prepare breakfast. He wanted the day to begin with warmth and small comforts. Cooked a simple meal and poured a glass of juice for her. She stirred slowly and sat up, stretching. Her eyes met his, and she gave a small smile. She felt comfortable and safe now. She ate carefully, savoring each bite. He watched her quietly, feeling content that she had another morning of security. After breakfast, they cleaned up together. The man suggested going for a walk to enjoy the fresh air. She agreed, and they walked slowly down the familiar streets, talking about small things like the colors of the leaves on the trees and the shapes of the buildings. She seemed more open now, willing to share little pieces of her life. He listened, attentively offering gentle encouragement and understanding. They stopped at a small park and sat on a bench. She spoke softly about her past, about the hardships she faced, and the fear of being alone. He listened patiently, without interrupting, letting her express herself fully. She shared her small dreams about going back to school and learning new things. He nodded and reassured her that small steps toward her goals were possible, that he would support her however he could. After the park, they visited a small store. She wanted a few small items for herself. He let her choose a notebook and some pencils. She held them carefully as if they were treasures. They walked back to the apartment, and she seemed proud of the simple belongings. She immediately began to draw on the small table while he did chores around the apartments. She drew quietly and carefully. He watched her concentration and the joy creating something brought to her life. He realized that these small acts of expression helped her feel human again. They shared quiet companionship in the soft rhythm of simple everyday activities. They shared a light lunch and talked about normal things. She asked about his work, and he told her gently. She listened and asked questions, showing curiosity and interest in ordinary life. She had been missing these moments of normal interaction, and they created a gentle bond between them. The afternoon he suggested a small craft activity. They gathered paper, scissors, and markers, and began making simple designs. She laughed softly when things did not come out as planned. He encouraged her patiently. They shared quiet smiles and enjoyed the small moments of creativity and companionship. Evening approached. He suggested preparing dinner together. She eagerly helped him chop vegetables and stir ingredients. He guided her gently and praised her efforts. She felt a sense of pride and accomplishment in contributing to the meal. Cooking together became a shared experience, and the meal felt more meaningful because it was prepared with care. They ate dinner together, quietly discussing the day. She shared more of her thoughts and dreams. He listened attentively, offering gentle encouragement, reminding her that small steps mattered and that her resilience and courage were already shaping her future. After dinner, they washed the dishes together and sat on the couch. She leaned back, feeling tired but content. He asked if she felt ready to stay for another night. She nodded and gathered the blanket around her. He gave her the pillow, an extra blanket again, and she settled comfortably. She whispered softly that she felt safe here, and he nodded, letting her know she was welcome. The man spent the evening reflecting on the days they had shared. He realized that helping her was more than providing food or shelter. It was about listening, showing kindness, and offering consistency. He understood that trust grew slowly, but each shared meal and gentle conversation formed a foundation of safety and connection. Thought about the challenges she had faced and her quiet strength despite the hardships she endured. She still had the desire to learn, to create, and to dream. He felt proud to witness the spark of hope returning to her eyes and proud to be part of her journey. The apartment was quiet and calm. They had built a subtle but strong bond based on trust and understanding. The man knew that tomorrow would bring new chances to share moments, to listen, and show care. He was committed to being patient, gentle, and consistent in supporting her. He spent some time reading quietly while she slept. The soft sound of her breathing reassured him and gave him a sense of calm and purpose. He understood that the path ahead would have challenges, but also small joys. Moments like this reminded him of the power of kindness and attention. They were strangers brought together by chance, but slowly becoming companions in a journey of healing and trust. By the time he went to bed, he felt fulfillment and determination. He knew that life could be difficult and unforgiving, but simple acts of warmth and care could change a life. He was grateful to be part of hers and to witness her slowly finding hope and safety. Each shared meal, each conversation, and each quiet moment of connection mattered and strengthened the bond between them. Night wrapped the apartment in calm and quiet. She rested peacefully, feeling safe, and he rested with the comfort of knowing he had made a difference. The connection they had formed would carry them forward, offering trust, hope, and the reassurance that small acts of kindness can create meaningful change in a life. The morning light was soft as it entered the apartment, and the man woke, feeling calm and focused. He looked over at the girls sleeping peacefully and felt a deep sense of responsibility. He quietly rose to prepare breakfast. As he had done before, he wanted to start the day with warmth and comfort for her. He cooked a simple meal and poured a glass of juice. She stirred slowly and sat up. Stretching, her eyes met his, and she gave a small smile. She felt secure and relaxed now. She ate carefully, savoring each bite. He watched quietly, feeling satisfaction that she had another morning of safety. After breakfast, they cleaned up together. He suggested a walk to enjoy the fresh morning air. She agreed, and they walked slowly down the familiar streets. They talked about simple things like the sounds of the city and the shapes of the trees. She seemed more open now, willing to share small details of her life. He listened patiently, offering gentle support and encouragement. They stopped at a park and sat on a bench. She spoke about her past, about being alone and her fears of sleeping outside. He listened quietly, letting her express herself fully. She shared small dreams about learning new things and being able to go back to school. He nodded and reassured her that small steps toward her dreams were possible and that he would help her however he could. After the park, they visited a small store. She wanted a few items for herself. He let her choose a notebook and pencils. She held them carefully as if they were treasures on the way back. She seemed proud of her choices and happy to have something to create with back at the apartment. She opened her notebook and began drawing. He continued with small chores around the apartment. He watched her focus and the quiet joy that making something brought to her. He realized that these simple acts of expression helped her feel normal and human again. They shared a simple lunch and talked about everyday things. She asked about his work and he answered gently. She listened and asked questions, showing curiosity and interest in ordinary life. They were building trust through these small interactions and simple conversations. In the afternoon, he suggested a small craft activity. They gathered paper, scissors, and markers and began making designs. She laughed softly when things did not turn out as planned. He encouraged her, and they shared quiet smiles. The activity was more than just making things. It was about enjoying the moment and being present together as evening approached. He suggested preparing dinner together. She helped him chop vegetables and stir ingredients. He guided her gently and praised her efforts. She felt pride and accomplishment. Cooking together became a shared experience, and the meal felt meaningful because it was made with care. They ate dinner quietly, discussing their day. She shared more of her thoughts and dreams. He listened attentively, offering gentle encouragement, reminding her that small steps mattered and that her strength and courage were already shaping her path. After dinner, they washed the dishes together and sat on the couch. She leaned back, feeling tired but content. He asked if she felt ready to stay another night. She nodded and wrapped the blanket around her. He placed the pillow and extra blanket for comfort, and she settled in. She whispered softly that she felt safe, and he nodded, letting her know she was welcomed. The man spent time reflecting on the days they had shared. He realized that helping her was about listening, showing kindness, and being consistent. He understood that trust took time, but each shared meal and conversation built a foundation of safety and connection. He thought about the hardships she had faced and the quiet strength she had shown. Despite difficulties, she still had the desire to create, to learn, and to dream. He felt proud to witness the spark of hope returning to her eyes, and proud to be part of her journey. The apartment was quiet and calm. They had formed a subtle but strong bond based on trust and understanding. The man knew tomorrow would bring new opportunities to share moments and offer care. He was committed to being patient and gentle and continuing to show support and kindness. He spent time reading quietly while she slept. The soft sound of her breathing reassured him and gave him calm and purpose. He understood the road ahead would have challenges, but also small joys. Moments like these reminded him of the power of kindness and attention. They were strangers who had met by chance but were slowly becoming companions in a journey of healing and trust. By the time he went to bed, he felt fulfillment and determination. He knew life could be difficult and unforgiving, but simple acts of warmth and care could change a life. He was grateful to be part of hers and to witness her slowly finding hope and safety. Each shared meal, each conversation, and each quiet moment of connection mattered and strengthened the bond between them. Night wrapped the apartment in quiet and calm. She rested peacefully, feeling safe, and he rested with comfort, knowing he had made a difference. The connection they had formed would carry them forward, offering trust, hope, and the reassurance that small acts of kindness can create meaningful change in a life.